Donald Trump only cares for Donald Trump. And the manner in which Donald Trump was spotted this week hosting the Pakistani army chief on the very same day that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was at the G7 in Calgary. Was it really worth it for Prime Minister Modi to engage in that "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar" chant in 2018?
Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar.
Which is why it is important to focus on the process of the nitty-gritty of diplomacy, not on theatre or event marketing or headline management or on viral Instagram reels. Namaskar, hello and welcome friends once again to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. America's business is business. This is an oft-repeated quote attributed to a former US President, Calvin Coolidge, during a period of economic boom in the early 1920s. It reflected America's intense preoccupation with itself, how to become a larger and larger economy. A century later, my friends, let's change the quote. Trump's interest is Donald Trump. That's right. There is growing evidence that Donald Trump is pursuing a single-minded foreign policy that is less based on making America great again, or the so-called MAGA that he promised during the election campaign, but actually making Trump great again. Now, in my view, he was never great, far from it, but only carried the aura and authority of being the president of the world's most powerful country. Nothing underlines this Trumpian view of the world more starkly than the manner in which Donald Trump was spotted this week hosting the Pakistani army chief turned self-appointed Field Marshal General Asim Munir at the White House on the very same day that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was at the G7 in Calgary. The optics, my friends, could not have been worse from an Indian perspective. There was Prime Minister Modi hoping to have an off-site date with Trump in Canada, and there was Donald Trump lunching with the same army chief who just 2 months ago was boasting about the two-nation theory of India and Pakistan, how he believed Hindus and Muslims could not coexist. This is the same General Asim Munir who is widely believed to be driving and sponsoring and financing the terror machine in Pakistan against India. This is the same Asim Munir who is widely believed to be behind the Pahalgam terror operation in April, where innocent Hindu tourists were systematically targeted in a horrific terror attack. And this is the same Asim Munir who's now being given a multi-course meal, a buffet in the White House. Yes, my friends, the United States has often engaged with military leaders from Pakistan. In 1971, Richard Nixon hosted Yahya Khan. In the 1980s, Zia-ul Haq was an ally of the Ronald Reagan presidency. And even General Pervez Musharraf, he of Kargil fame or infamy, was hosted at the White House by George W. Bush. But those military leaders were also at the time officially the rulers of their country, having deposed the civilian leadership. Pakistan's Prime Minister at the moment is Shehbaz Sharif, and yet the United States President consciously chooses to break bread with the general first. What does it say about the pitiable state of the civilian leadership in Pakistan? But what does it also say about Trump and the United States? This is a country, as I said earlier, that romanced General Zia in the 1980s, despite the martial law the general had imposed in that country, simply because they needed a strategic ally in the war in Afghanistan. This is a country that flirted with General Musharraf in the 2000s because they saw him too as some kind of an ally in the war against terror. And now General Munir might be making himself useful because of Pakistan's large border with Iran, important in the context of the ongoing Iran-Israel conflict. Remember also, Pakistan remains the only Islamic country with a nuclear bomb at the moment. So we can conveniently forget, or the United States conveniently forgets, that Pakistan is the terror sponsor against India with groups like the Lashkar and the Jaish. Suddenly, Islamabad has become a country that Donald Trump loves, and the general is his special lunch guest. Pakistan has played this smartly, making itself seemingly indispensable to the United States' interests in the region at least in the short term. Tactics. Remember, it's not just the lunch. In the last 2 months since Pahalgam, Pakistan has become the vice chair of the UN Committee, United Nations Committee on Counter-Terror. Pakistan has become a chairman of the Taliban Sanctions Committee. Pakistan has got its much needed second tranche of an IMF loan. A loan from the ADB, is striking arms deals with Russia and retains its special relationship with China. A relationship that was seen to result in the virtual fusion of the two militaries during Operation Sindoor. The question now is, where does this leave India and Prime Minister Modi's Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar chant of 2018? Don't forget, it is just weeks ago that India had struck Pakistan terror infrastructure during Operation Sindoor, and the entire narrative then was about how we had drawn a red line, a line in the sand, and ensured that Pakistan wouldn't recover for a while at least from these fierce blows on their air bases. And yet just weeks later, it's General Munir who gets invited to lunch with the US President, and the world just watches. Okay, we know that Prime Minister Modi was also supposed to meet Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7 before the US President rushed back to handle the snowballing Israel-Iran crisis. We also know that Prime Minister Modi did eventually have a 35-minute phone call with the US President. That Mr. Modi too was invited over to the White House, a last-minute invite which he rightfully declined. We also are told that Modi apparently made it clear to Donald Trump not to link the Indo-Pak ceasefire with trade or any kind of external mediation, but accept that the ceasefire was reached at only after a desperate call from the Pakistan military. And yet the truth is that on the very day that the Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri was making a long statement on that phone call, mind you in Hindi, thereby serving largely a domestic audience, about how Mr. Modi had talked tough with Washington, what does our Donald Trump do? He repeats his claim yet again. I brought India and Pakistan to agree to a ceasefire.
I stopped a war between two major nations.
He says it not once, but twice in the same statement outside the White House just before he's meeting General Munir. In fact, at least 15 times and counting in the last month. Read my lips, 15 times. Donald Trump has claimed credit for bringing India and Pakistan to stop the fighting. You could argue that this is a sign of Trump's desperation. I mean, here is a president who comes to power 6 months ago promising to end all wars, but finds himself unable to stop any war and now could even drag the United States into another conflict in the Middle East. So Donald Trump seemingly is desperate for a headline from the India-Pakistan ceasefire. And yet, by repeatedly claiming and taking credit for it, Trump has embarrassed India and Prime Minister Modi no end. Okay, I know many of you there will say, why should we treat what Donald Trump says seriously? Trust in our own Prime Minister. Donald Trump is a congenital liar. Remember also, we are on the way to becoming the 4th largest economy in the world. We will soon have a trade deal with Pakistan. So why should we really care about what Trump does or does not do with Pakistan? Well, the truth is, my friends, we should care. Because what Trump is doing today will eventually have some kind of an impact on our immediate national security in the neighborhood. Yes, we must focus on making ourselves a global economic power like the Chinese have done, because that gives you more heft on the world table. But at the same time, we need to ensure that Washington does not equate India with Pakistan when it comes to strategic concerns, which is sadly what seems to have happened. It leaves me to ask, what have we achieved with all the fancy all-party teams that went to the United States and other global capitals at taxpayers' expense to make India's case on Pak-based terror? Why haven't any of those countries even once outrightly condemned Pakistan for being a terror sponsor? What will it take for India to bring up Pakistan back onto the Financial Action Task Force grey list? You see, sometimes actions speak louder than words. In 2008, after the Mumbai terror attacks, India used diplomacy to put pressure on Pakistan to rein in its terror machine. Then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh did not scream from the rooftops, and he was attacked by many critics for being a weak Prime Minister, for not taking firmer kinetic military actions. But guess what? India under Dr. Singh did get global endorsements for our actions in exposing Pakistani involvement in 2611 by sending out dossiers detailing Pakistan's involvement in 2611 with hard evidence. And from 2008 to 2015, for 7 years, there was no major strike on Indian soil. Now we have taken what many believe was the right step in the circumstances in targeting Pakistan terror infra with precision strikes, in making no distinction anymore between the Pakistani state and the so-called non-state actors. And yet, Donald Trump, sitting in the White House, seems unimpressed. Instead, we have a US president who appears to take delight in equating and hyphenating India and Pakistan, when the last thing we need is any kind of India-Pakistan hyphenation anymore. All of which leads me, my friends, to ask another question. Was it really worth it, in hindsight, for Prime Minister Modi to engage in that Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar chant in 2018 and then an equally effusive Namaste Trump event in Ahmedabad in 2020? Maybe Trump saw in Modi a strong man in his own self-image, someone who could be an ally through good times and bad, someone with whom he could strike a personal relationship. In hindsight, it was, in my view, a terrible miscalculation. Donald Trump only cares for Donald Trump. He is a delusional narcissist who probably hopes for the Nobel Peace Prize for himself. Truth is, strongmen are not peacemakers. They are deal makers. Hopefully then, the Modi government has learnt its lessons. There is more to diplomacy than optics or becoming self-proclaimed Vishwa Gurus. The world order as it stands today has never been so morally vacuous. There are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. Which is why it is important to focus on the process of the nitty-gritty of diplomacy, not on theatre or event marketing or headline management or on viral Instagram reels. As a postscript, let me say this. One more reason that I am glad that Mr. Modi did not accept that last-minute Trump invite to come to the White House this week is quite simply this. Who knows, the US president might have suddenly ambushed us by getting Modi and Munir face-to-face in one room. Remember, you are dealing with a leader who knows a thing or two about reality TV, a showman, not just a president. Modi and Munir face-to-face would have been Donald Trump's big boss moment. Think about it. That was the Straight Bat. Do, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe. Jai Hind. Namaskar.